The credit card application rejection letter fell from my trembling hands as the floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Not metaphorically, literally tilted. The bank's marble floor swirled in my vision as the security guard rushed toward me. Through the encroaching darkness, I watched my cousin Olivia's perfectly manicured hand snatch up the rejection letter before anyone else could see it. "Sorry about my cousin," I heard her say distantly as my knees buckled. "She gets dramatic when she doesn't get what she wants." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The last thing I saw before the panic attack completely overwhelmed me was that damning letter with my name, Sophie Wilson, and a credit score so destroyed it might as well have been radioactive waste. My identity, my financial future, disappearing into Olivia's expensive handbag once again. My name is Sophie. I'm 28, and I've been fighting identity theft for nearly 3 years. This is the story of how a government security clearance investigation exposed the family member who was systematically destroying my life. Even before the bank incident, I'd been fighting to stay afloat for months. The warning signs had started appearing in January when mysterious credit card statements began arriving at my apartment, accounts I'd never opened. By March, collection agencies were calling day and night for debts I'd never incurred. And now, in April, I couldn't even qualify for a basic credit card with my own legitimate information. Why is my credit score 470? I'd asked the bank officer, already suspecting the terrible truth as I stood at his desk, the rejection letter clutched in my shaking hands. He'd looked uncomfortable, scanning the screen. "There are multiple delinquent accounts, Ms. Wilson. Several maxed-out credit cards, 2 defaulted personal loans, and what appears to be an automobile repossession from last month." "None of those are mine," I whispered, the panic rising in my chest. "I've been trying to report fraud, but the credit bureaus keep asking for documentation I don't have." That was when I spotted Olivia across the bank lobby, casually checking her phone as if she hadn't driven me there, as if she hadn't insisted on coming inside for moral support. The same Olivia who had access to my mail when we shared an apartment 2 years ago. The same Olivia who still somehow knew details about my finances that I never shared. "Olivia." I called out, my voice breaking, as realization crashed through me like a tidal wave. "What did you do?" She glanced up, irritation flashing across her face before morphing into practiced concern. "What are you talking about, Sophie? Are you having one of your episodes again?" That's how it had always been in the Wilson family. Olivia, 32. The sophisticated, put-together cousin who could do no wrong. Me, the younger cousin whose anxiety attacks were convenient excuses for the family to dismiss anything I said. What none of them understood, what they refused to understand, was that identity theft doesn't care about family dynamics. It doesn't schedule financial destruction for maximum convenience. It's a systematic dismantling of your life that can impact everything, anytime, anywhere. Like in a bank where you're begging for a basic credit card, because you can't even rent an apartment without a cosigner anymore. Because your cousin has opened multiple accounts in your name, maxed them out, and defaulted on all of them while living a lifestyle she couldn't afford on her own income. She needs help. A stranger's voice cut through the fog as gentle hands guided me to a nearby chair in the bank lobby. She's having a panic attack. Give her space. After the security guard confirmed I was stable enough to leave without medical intervention, I heard Olivia's practiced, sympathetic tone as she helped me into her car. "You always did know how to make every situation about you, Sophie," she said softly, as if comforting a child. I clutched the rejection letter, now wrinkled from my grip, evidence of financial destruction that I needed to add to my growing file of proof. Monday was my first day at the Department of Energy, a job I'd fought hard to secure after graduating with my master's in cybersecurity. A job that required an extensive background check and security clearance. A process that would uncover every financial detail of my life. A process that would either save me or destroy my career before it even started. Grandma Eleanor had been the only person who believed me when I first suspected something was wrong with my finances. The only one who'd loaned me money for rent when my bank account was mysteriously drained last year. The only one who'd visited me after my first major panic attack when I discovered the first fraudulent credit card, while my parents suggested I might be overreacting again. "Family doesn't always mean trustworthy," Grandma had warned, her eyes knowing. "Watch your accounts like a hawk, Sophie. Someone close to you is not who they appear to be. The anxiety attacks had grown worse over the years. What started as occasional episodes triggered by specific stressors had evolved into debilitating events that left me gasping for breath. Convinced I was dying, Dr. Bennett had prescribed medication and therapy, warned about the physical toll of chronic stress, about the dangers of untreated financial trauma and identity theft. My family had nodded politely during conversations about my mental health, then dismissed everything once the topic changed. Chronic stress can lead to serious physical health consequences, Dr. Bennett had emphasized during my last visit. Each financial hit is compounding your anxiety. You're at serious risk for long-term health issues if this situation isn't resolved. I'd explained about the identity theft, about my suspicions regarding Olivia, about my family enabling her by dismissing my concerns. This is financial abuse, she'd said flatly, and identity theft is a federal crime. You need to report this. But what could I do? Working as a barista barely covered my expenses while finishing my degree. Moving far away meant choosing between transportation and food. Staying in the same city meant being constantly undermined by Olivia's influence over our extended family, but at least having occasional support from Grandma Eleanor. On Monday morning, I stood before the mirror, noting the dark circles under my eyes, the slight tremor in my hands, warning signs of my deteriorating mental health. The stress was becoming unbearable. Today was my first day at the Department of Energy, and I was terrified that my destroyed credit would impact my security clearance investigation. The federal building was imposing and sterile, all glass and steel with security checkpoints at every turn. My new supervisor, Director Harmon, a serious woman in her 50s, greeted me with a firm handshake. "Welcome to the team, Ms. Wilson. Your technical qualifications are impressive, but as you know, the security clearance process can take several months. In the meantime, you'll be working on unclassified projects only." She studied me over the rim of her coffee cup. "The background investigators will be thorough. They'll look at everything: finances, relationships, foreign contacts. Is there anything you want to disclose now that might come up during their investigation?" My heart raced. This was my chance. "Yes," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "I've been a victim of identity theft for the past few years. My credit has been severely damaged as a result. I've filed police reports and am working with credit agencies, but it's been difficult to resolve." Director Harmon's expression remained neutral. "I see. Do you have documentation of these reports?" "The investigators will need to see everything." "Some," I admitted, "but the credit bureaus have been slow to respond, and the police—" I hesitated. "The police haven't taken it as seriously as they should because I suspect the person responsible is a family member." "A family member," she repeated, making a note in my file. "That complicates things. Security clearances are largely about determining if you're vulnerable to coercion or manipulation. Having a relative who has financial leverage over you could be problematic." That's when it hit. The panic welled up from deep inside, threatening to overwhelm me right there in my new boss's office. My vision began to tunnel, my breathing became shallow and rapid. I gripped the arms of the chair, focusing on staying present. "Ms. Wilson, are you all right?" Director Harmon's voice seemed distant. "I'm having a mild anxiety attack," I managed to say between controlled breaths. "It happens when I discuss this situation. I'll be okay in a moment." To her credit, Director Harmon didn't overreact. She calmly offered water and waited until my breathing normalized. "Have you considered filing formal charges against this family member?" she asked when I was calmer. "They'd deny everything," I said quietly, "and my family would back them up. They always do." "Well," she said, closing my file, "the security investigators aren't family. They follow evidence, not emotions. If someone has been systematically stealing your identity, they'll find proof." She was right. The background investigation began immediately. Special Agent Liam Rivera from the Office of Personnel Management contacted me within days. Unlike the dismissive police officers and confused credit bureau representatives, Agent Rivera listened intently as I explained the situation. "Identity theft is taken very seriously in security clearance investigations," he explained. "Not just because of the financial implications, but because it speaks to your personal security practices and potential vulnerabilities. When I mentioned my suspicions about Olivia, he didn't immediately dismiss me as paranoid. Instead, he asked for details. When did I first notice discrepancies? Who had access to my personal information? What patterns had I observed? For the first time in years, someone with authority was actually listening to me. Taking notes. Treating my situation with the gravity it deserved. I'll need access to all your financial records, Agent Rivera said. And I'll need to interview your family members, including your cousin, Olivia. The investigation proceeded methodically. Agent Rivera obtained my credit reports, bank statements, and utility records. He interviewed my parents, my brother, and several other family members. And finally, he interviewed Olivia. I wasn't present for her interview, but I received a call from Agent Rivera the following day. Ms. Wilson, we've uncovered some concerning information. Can you come to our office this afternoon? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The federal building's investigation room was small and functional, with a table, 4 chairs, and no windows. Agent Rivera sat beside his partner, Agent Chen, both with identically serious expressions. On the table between us lay a stack of documents. Ms. Wilson, we've completed our preliminary investigation into your identity theft case, Agent Rivera began. What we've found is troubling. Agent Chen opened a folder. Over the past 3 years, someone has opened 17 credit accounts in your name. They've taken out 3 personal loans, financed a luxury vehicle, rented 2 apartments, and even established utility services, all using your social security number and personal information. The total financial damage is approximately $127,000, Agent Rivera added. The number hit me like a physical blow. That's more than twice what I've earned in my entire life, I whispered. Based on our investigation, we've determined that these accounts were not opened by you, Agent Chen continued. The signature patterns don't match yours, the contact information provided on applications was different, and most importantly, we've traced the IP addresses used for online applications. Agent Rivera slid a document across the table. It was a printout of IP address logs, with dates and times highlighted. These applications were submitted from your cousin Olivia's home network and devices. We've also obtained security camera footage from 3 different banks showing Olivia, not you, opening accounts in your name. The evidence was overwhelming. Pages of bank statements, credit applications, even photos of Olivia using credit cards with my name on them. They had transaction records showing purchases at high-end stores, restaurants, and even a vacation to Bali, all supposedly by me, all actually by Olivia. There's more, Agent Rivera said, his voice gentle but firm. When we interviewed your cousin yesterday, we informed her that lying to federal investigators is a felony. She initially denied everything, but when confronted with the evidence, she confessed. He pushed a document toward me, a signed confession from Olivia, acknowledging that she had systematically stolen my identity, opened fraudulent accounts, and deliberately undermined my attempts to report the fraud by intercepting my mail and gaslighting me to our family. She also admitted to accessing your online accounts by using information she gathered while you were roommates, Agent Chen added. She knew your passwords, security questions, and had copied your identification documents. The relief of finally being believed, of having concrete proof, was overwhelming. Tears spilled down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness or anxiety. They were tears of vindication. What happens now? I asked, wiping my eyes. That depends partly on you, Agent Rivera said. We've turned our findings over to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Identity theft is a federal offense, punishable by up to 15 years in prison and substantial fines. Your cousin is facing serious charges. As for your security clearance, Agent Chen added, this investigation has actually worked in your favor. We verified that you were a victim, not financially irresponsible. We'll provide documentation to help you clear your credit, and our report will explain the situation to the clearance adjudicators. I left the federal building that day with a strange mixture of emotions: relief, vindication, sadness, and a kind of fierce determination I hadn't felt in years. The weight of suspicion and self-doubt had been lifted, replaced by the certainty of evidence and the protection of federal investigators who took my situation seriously. The family fallout was immediate and intense. My parents called that evening, their voices tight with disbelief and anger, not at Olivia, but at me. "How could you involve federal agents?" My mother demanded. "This is family business, Sophie." "No, Mom," I replied, my voice steadier than it had been in years. "Identity theft is federal crime business. Olivia stole over $100,000 using my name. She destroyed my credit. She made me think I was losing my mind." "She's family," my father insisted. "She made mistakes, but pressing charges? That's going too far." "She committed felony fraud," I said simply. "Multiple felonies, actually. And she did it deliberately, repeatedly over years, while watching me suffer, while gaslighting me to all of you." The silence on the other end of the line was telling. "The FBI has her confession," I continued. "This isn't about me pressing charges anymore. Federal prosecutors will make that decision." That night, I slept soundly for the first time in years. The constant anxiety that had become my companion finally began to loosen its grip. The knowledge that I wasn't crazy, that I had been right all along, was more powerful than any anti-anxiety medication. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Olivia was charged with multiple counts of identity theft, wire fraud, and making false statements to federal investigators. Faced with overwhelming evidence, including her own confession, she accepted a plea deal: 5 years of probation, restitution of all stolen funds, and 500 hours of community service teaching financial literacy to low-income communities. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Her greed for a lifestyle she couldn't afford had cost her far more than she'd gained. The felony conviction ended her career in real estate and her carefully cultivated image as the successful family member. Meanwhile, my security clearance was approved. The investigation report clearly established that I was a victim, not a perpetrator, and my handling of the situation, despite family pressure, demonstrated the kind of integrity federal agencies value. Director Harmon personally congratulated me when the clearance came through. "You showed remarkable resilience," she told me. "That's exactly the quality we need in cybersecurity professionals." I used the restitution money to clear my debts and rebuild my credit. I moved into a secure apartment building with 24-hour surveillance and set up elaborate protection for all my accounts. I see a new therapist who specializes in financial trauma and identity theft recovery, who's helping me process the betrayal and rebuild trust. "Your anxiety wasn't irrational," Dr. Marshall told me during our first session. "It was your brain's way of alerting you to a very real threat. Now we can work on healing from that prolonged stress response." I volunteer with an identity theft support group, sharing my story with others whose situations are dismissed or minimized by family and authorities. "Never let anyone make you feel paranoid for protecting your financial identity," I tell them. "Your intuition is valid. Your financial security is non-negotiable." Sometimes I think about that day at the bank, the terror of having a panic attack in public, the humiliation of being dismissed as dramatic once again. But then I remember Agent Rivera's face, when he showed me the evidence, the vindication of finally being believed, the justice of consequences finally landing where they belonged. Olivia still insists she didn't think it was that serious. My parents claim they were just trying to keep family peace. We maintain a distant relationship now, occasional texts and holiday cards, but I've made it clear my boundaries are firm. They've respected those boundaries since the federal investigation. The panic attack at the bank wasn't convenient or timed for maximum attention. It was the inevitable result of years of gaslighting and financial abuse. But in a twist of cosmic justice, it happened just as I was starting a job that initiated the very investigation that would expose the truth. Grandma Eleanor, who'd believed me from the start and supported me when no one else would, had somehow known the truth all along. "Sometimes the universe has a way of bringing secrets into the light," she told me after Olivia's plea deal. "You just have to stay strong long enough to see it happen." Now every morning I check my credit monitoring app, review my bank accounts, and update my security protocols, all without anyone calling me paranoid. It shouldn't be a luxury to have financial security, but for me, it feels like freedom. And, Olivia? She learned that sometimes your crimes catch up to you in the most unexpected ways, through the very success of the person you tried to destroy. The day after my meeting with the federal investigators, I stood at the window of my small apartment, watching the sunrise with a strange sense of calm. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without the crushing weight of anxiety pressing on my chest. The evidence Agent Rivera had presented was irrefutable. The truth I had suspected, the truth I had known in my bones but doubted in my darkest moments, was finally confirmed with documents, signatures, and surveillance footage. Olivia had systematically stolen my identity, and now she would face consequences. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Grandma Eleanor. I answered immediately. Sophie, darling. Her warm voice came through the line. I just heard from your mother. Is it true? About Olivia? Yes, I said simply. The federal investigators found everything, she confessed. There was a long pause, then a deep sigh. I always knew that girl wasn't right. Too perfect on the outside, too hollow on the inside. Another pause. Are you okay? That simple question, asked with genuine concern rather than accusation, broke something open inside me. I think I'm going to be, I said, my voice catching. For the first time in years, someone with authority actually believed me. They have proof, Grandma. Real proof. Good, she said firmly. It's about time. Now, what can I do to help? That was Grandma Eleanor. Practical, supportive, and always ready with action rather than empty sympathy. She had been my rock through all of this, the one person who never dismissed my concerns or suggested I was overreacting. While my parents and siblings had fallen under Olivia's spell of charm and deflection, Grandma had seen through the facade from the beginning. Just keep believing me, I said softly. That's enough. I've got something better than belief, she replied, a smile in her voice. I've got a spare bedroom and a security system. Come stay with me while this all plays out. Your parents are going to be difficult about this. She wasn't wrong. Within hours, my phone was flooded with messages from family members. My mother's texts escalated from confused to angry to pleading. Sophie, what's this about federal agents questioning Olivia? How could you involve outsiders in family matters? Olivia is devastated. She says it's all a misunderstanding. Please call these investigators and tell them you've changed your mind. My father was more direct, calling repeatedly until I finally answered. This ends now, he said, his voice tight with anger. You're tearing this family apart with these accusations. They're not accusations anymore, Dad, I replied, surprised by my own steady voice. They're documented facts, Olivia confessed. Under duress? They threatened her with jail time if she didn't say what they wanted. I closed my eyes, gathering patience. They showed her evidence. Surveillance footage of her opening accounts in my name. IP addresses from her computer. Purchase records from her devices. They didn't need to threaten her. The truth was already obvious. She made mistakes, he insisted. Everyone does. But she's family. You don't turn family over to the FBI. The irony was almost too much. She stole my identity for 3 years, Dad. She watched me have panic attacks over financial problems she created. She told all of you I was unstable and paranoid while she was actively destroying my life. Where was this family loyalty then? His silence spoke volumes. I didn't seek out the FBI, I continued. They found me during my security clearance investigation. But I'm not sorry they did. For the first time in years, I have proof that I'm not crazy, that everything I suspected was real. This will follow her forever, he said finally. A criminal record. Is that what you want for your cousin? What I wanted was for her to stop stealing my identity, I replied. What I wanted was for my family to believe me when I said something was wrong. What I wanted was help. None of that happened. So yes, I want consequences now. I've earned them the hard way. I hung up, hands shaking but resolve intact. That evening I packed a bag and took Grandma Eleanor up on her offer, moving into her spare bedroom in her modest but immaculate home across town. The distance from my apartment and from the family chaos gave me space to process what was happening. The next morning, I returned to work at the Department of Energy, where Director Harmon called me into her office immediately. "I've received an update from the security clearance investigators," she said without preamble. "Your case is unusual." My heart sank. Despite the evidence, was my clearance still in jeopardy? Typically, financial issues are the leading cause of clearance denials. She continued, "But in your situation, the investigation has actually strengthened your case. Agent Rivera has provided detailed documentation showing you were the victim, not the perpetrator." She slid a folder across her desk. "Your interim clearance has been approved. That's almost unheard of in cases with financial complications. The investigators were impressed with your persistence in reporting the fraud, despite family pressure to remain silent." Relief washed over me. "Thank you, I managed." "Don't thank me," Director Harmon said. "You earned this. Integrity under pressure is exactly what we look for in cybersecurity professionals. Now," she continued briskly, "you'll be joining the Critical Infrastructure Protection Team. They're expecting you this morning." Walking through the secure area for the first time, badge prominently displayed, I felt a surge of pride that eclipsed the lingering anxiety. This job, this career, was what I had worked toward through years of study and sacrifice. Olivia had nearly taken it from me, but in the end, the very security procedures she might have destroyed had been my salvation. My new team welcomed me without fanfare. 5 serious professionals focused on protecting power grids and water systems from cyber threats. My supervisor, Dr. Rahul Mehta, a brilliant cybersecurity expert with kind eyes behind steel-rimmed glasses, showed me to my workstation. "We're currently analyzing potential vulnerabilities in the Western power grid's control systems," he explained. "Your thesis on zero-day exploits in industrial control systems is exactly the expertise we need." For the next 8 hours, I immersed myself in code and security protocols, working alongside colleagues who respected technical skill and analytical thinking. No one questioned my competence or suggested I was overreacting when I identified potential security gaps. In this environment, caution and thoroughness weren't character flaws, they were professional requirements. When I finally checked my phone at the end of the day, I had 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. Most from family members, but one from a number I didn't recognize. I listened to the voicemail as I walked to my car. "Ms. Wilson, this is Meredith Kane from the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm the prosecutor assigned to the identity theft case involving Olivia Wilson. I'd like to discuss the case with you at your earliest convenience. Please call me back at this number." I returned the call immediately, standing beside my car in the government parking lot as the sun set over the city. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for returning my call," the prosecutor began. "I've reviewed the evidence collected by Agents Rivera and Chen. The case against your cousin is substantial. However, I understand there are family complications involved." "My family would prefer I drop everything," I acknowledged. "They think I'm overreacting. $127,000 in fraudulent accounts is not an overreaction," she said dryly. "Neither is deliberately undermining your attempts to report the fraud. Your cousin's actions were calculated and sustained over years. This isn't a case of a one-time mistake." "I know," I said quietly. "Here's what's happening," Ms. Kane continued. "We've offered your cousin a plea agreement. In exchange for her full cooperation and guilty plea to 2 felony counts of identity theft, we're recommending probation instead of prison time, along with full financial restitution and community service. If she declines, we'll proceed to trial on all 17 counts, with potential prison time of 5 to 15 years. The reality of the situation hit me anew. Olivia could go to prison. My glamorous, charismatic cousin, who had always seemed untouchable, could actually face serious jail time for what she'd done to me. "What does she say?" I asked. "Her attorney has requested 48 hours to consider the offer," Ms. Kane replied. "I wanted you to know as the victim in this case. While the final decision on prosecution rests with my office, your input matters." I thought carefully before responding. "I want 3 things," I want her to admit what she did to my entire family. I want complete restitution for the financial damage. And I want assurance she can never do this to anyone else. If those conditions are met, I support probation over prison time." "That's very reasonable," Ms. Kane said, a note of approval in her voice. "I'll make those conditions clear to her attorney. One more thing. Your cousin is prohibited from contacting you directly while this case is pending. If she attempts to reach out or if family members pressure you on her behalf, please let me know immediately." That night at Grandma Eleanor's house, I sat at her kitchen table with a cup of herbal tea, explaining the day's developments. "Prison?" she murmured, shaking her head. "I never thought it would come to that. Not for our Olivia." "It probably won't," I said. "If she accepts the plea deal, she'll get probation." Grandma reached across the table and took my hand in her weathered one. "You're being more merciful than she deserves, you know, after what she put you through." "I don't want revenge," I said, surprised to discover it was true. "I just want my life back. I want my credit restored. I want my family to know the truth. And I want her to never be able to do this to anyone else." "Your parents won't see it that way," Grandma warned. "They've always been blind where Olivia is concerned." As if on cue, my phone lit up with my mother's number. I hesitated, then answered on speakerphone so Grandma could hear. "Sophie," my mother began without greeting, her voice tightly controlled. "I've just come from meeting with Olivia and her lawyer. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I think the question is, do you have any idea what Olivia has done?" I countered quietly. "She made some mistakes with finances." My mother dismissed. "Everyone does. But federal charges? A criminal record that will follow her forever? Destroying her career over some credit card mix-ups? That's going too far." "Mom," I said carefully, "Olivia systematically stole my identity for 3 years. She opened 17 fraudulent accounts in my name. She took out loans she never intended to repay. She bought a luxury car using my credit. She took a vacation to Bali with credit cards bearing my name. That's not a mix-up. It's calculated fraud. She says you gave her permission to use your information," my mother insisted. "That you were helping her through a rough patch after her divorce." The audacity of the lies stole my breath for a moment. "That's absolutely false," I finally managed. "And the evidence proves it. The federal investigators have surveillance footage of her opening accounts without me present. They have her digital footprint on applications. They have her confession, Mom." "Coerced!" my mother cried. "They threatened her with prison." "They showed her evidence. I corrected. Evidence of crimes she actually committed. Against me. Your daughter. The one you're not currently defending." The silence that followed was deafening. "Your father and I have decided to help Olivia with her legal expenses," my mother finally said, her voice cold. "And we expect you to tell the prosecutor you don't want to press charges." "That's not how federal cases work," I explained, fighting to keep my voice steady. "This isn't a family dispute that I can just drop. The U.S. Attorney's Office is prosecuting her for federal crimes. They've already offered her a plea deal that would keep her out of prison. If she's smart, she'll take it. If you really cared about this family, you would find a way to make this go away," my mother said. "I'm very disappointed in you, Sophie." As the call ended, I stared at the phone in disbelief. Grandma Eleanor shook her head slowly. "Some people can't see the truth even when it's sitting right in front of them," she said gently. "Your mother has always favored Olivia, her sister's child, raised as our own after your aunt died. Perhaps she feels guilty for loving Olivia more, so she can't admit when Olivia is wrong." "But I'm her daughter," I whispered. "Yes," Grandma said, squeezing my hand. "And I'm very proud of the woman you've become. Strong enough to stand up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it's family." The next 2 days passed in a blur of work and legal consultations. My new position at the Department of Energy provided welcome distraction, the complex cybersecurity challenges requiring my full concentration. Dr. Mehta proved to be a supportive supervisor, assigning me meaningful projects that utilized my technical skills while giving me space to adjust to the new environment. On the third day, I received a call from Prosecutor Kane. "Your cousin has accepted the plea agreement," she informed me. "She'll plead guilty to 2 counts of identity theft. The terms include 5 years of probation, full restitution of $127, $843 plus interest, 500 hours of community service at a financial literacy center, and a permanent ban on working in financial services or real estate. She's also required to make a full disclosure to your family as a condition of the plea." Relief washed over me. When will that happen? The plea hearing is scheduled for next Monday at 10 a.m. The judge will need to approve the agreement, but with your support as the victim, I don't anticipate any issues. Would you like to make a victim impact statement at the hearing? I hadn't considered the possibility of speaking in court. What would that involve? You would have the opportunity to tell the judge how this crime has affected you. Financially, emotionally, psychologically. It helps the court understand the full impact of the defendant's actions. Yes, I decided. I want to do that. The weekend before the hearing, I stayed with Grandma Eleanor, avoiding family gatherings and focusing on preparing my statement. How could I possibly condense 3 years of anxiety, gaslighting, financial destruction, and family betrayal into a few minutes of testimony? How could I make the judge understand what it felt like to be disbelieved by my own family while my life was systematically dismantled? Grandma found me Sunday night surrounded by crumpled drafts, tears of frustration streaming down my face. "May I?" she asked, gently taking the latest version from my hands. She read it silently, then looked up. "It's very thorough. But I think you're trying to prove what happened. That's already been done by the investigators. This is your chance to share how it affected you." "I'm afraid they won't understand," I admitted. "That they'll think I'm being dramatic. Just like my family always says." Grandma Eleanor sat beside me, her expression serious. "Sophie, listen to me. You are not responsible for other people's inability to see the truth. Not your parents, not Olivia's, and not the court's. Your job is simply to speak your truth clearly. The rest is up to them." She was right, of course. I tore up the elaborate documentation I'd been preparing and started fresh, writing from the heart about the isolation, the self-doubt, the anxiety that had become my constant companion. I wrote about checking my credit score compulsively, about panic attacks when the mail arrived, about the growing distance between me and my family as they consistently chose to believe Olivia over me. By morning, I had a simple, honest statement that felt true to my experience. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, my one professional outfit saved for important interviews. Grandma Eleanor insisted on accompanying me to the courthouse, her protective presence a buffer against whatever family drama might unfold. The federal courthouse was imposing, all marble columns and echoing hallways. As we approached the designated courtroom, I spotted my parents and several other family members already seated on the benches. They had positioned themselves behind the defense table where Olivia would sit, a clear statement of allegiance. Prosecutor Kane met us outside the courtroom, professional in a charcoal suit with a single strand of pearls. "Ms. Wilson, are you ready?" I nodded, clutching my prepared statement. "As the victim, you'll be seated with me at the prosecution table," she explained. "Your grandmother can sit in the public gallery. The procedure today is straightforward. The judge will review the plea agreement. Your cousin will enter her guilty plea. You'll have an opportunity to make your statement. And then the judge will formally accept or reject the agreement. Any questions?" "Will Olivia speak?" I asked. "Yes, she'll have an opportunity to address the court before sentencing. Her attorney has indicated she wishes to make a statement." We entered the courtroom together. I kept my eyes forward, avoiding my family's stares as I walked to the prosecution table. Only when I was seated did I allow myself to look at Olivia for the first time since the investigation began. My glamorous cousin looked diminished in a conservative gray dress, her usually perfect hair pulled back severely, her face bare of makeup. She sat rigidly beside her attorney, staring straight ahead. When our eyes briefly met, she quickly looked away. The proceedings began with formal introductions. Judge Martinez, a stern-looking woman with silver-streaked black hair, reviewed the plea agreement thoroughly. Ms. Olivia Wilson, you understand that by pleading guilty to these charges you are waiving your right to a trial? She asked. Yes, Your Honor, Olivia replied, her voice barely audible. And you are admitting that you knowingly and willfully used the identification of another person, your cousin, Sophie Wilson, without lawful authority and with the intent to commit unlawful activity? Yes, Your Honor. Very well. I'll now hear from the victim. Ms. Sophie Wilson? Heart pounding, I approached the podium, my prepared statement trembling in my hands. I took a deep breath and began. Your Honor, 3 years ago my cousin Olivia began systematically stealing my identity. She opened credit cards, took out loans, even financed a car, all using my name and social security number. But the financial damage, though significant at over $127,000, was only part of the harm she caused. The deeper injury came from the psychological impact. When I first noticed strange accounts on my credit report, I was confused. When collection agencies started calling, I was frightened. When I realized my own cousin was responsible, I was devastated. But the worst pain came when I tried to tell my family what was happening. Olivia convinced them I was paranoid. Dramatic. Attention-seeking. She watched me have panic attacks over debts I never incurred, while telling my family I was mentally unstable. For 3 years, I doubted my own perceptions, because the people who should have believed me chose to believe her instead. The identity theft Olivia committed wasn't just financial. It was emotional. She stole my credibility, my peace of mind, my trust in my own family. She watched me suffer while living lavishly on fraudulent credit in my name. I don't want revenge, I want restoration. I support the plea agreement because it provides restitution for the financial damage and creates consequences that will prevent her from doing this to anyone else. But no court order can restore the family trust that's been destroyed. That's a separate reconciliation process that can only begin with full honesty and genuine remorse. Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing me to share my experience. As I returned to my seat, the courtroom remained silent. Judge Martinez nodded thoughtfully, then turned to Olivia. Ms. Wilson, you have the right to address the court before I decide whether to accept this plea agreement. Do you wish to make a statement? Olivia stood slowly, her composure visibly fragile. Yes, Your Honor. She turned slightly, and for the first time looked directly at me. Sophie, there's no excuse for what I did. I could say it started small. Just one credit card when I was desperate after my divorce. I told myself I'd pay it off before you ever knew. But then I needed more, and it became so easy to use your information. You had perfect credit, a good job coming, and I was failing at everything. I lied to the family about you. I made them think you were exaggerating. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't stop. The more you figured out, the more I had to discredit you to protect myself. It was cruel and calculated, and I'm truly sorry. Your Honor, I accept full responsibility for my actions. I betrayed my cousin's trust in the worst possible way. I'm prepared to face the consequences and do whatever it takes to make amends, though I understand some damage can never be repaired. Judge Martinez considered both statements carefully before speaking. Identity theft is a serious crime with far-reaching consequences for victims. Ms. Olivia Wilson, you systematically defrauded financial institutions and betrayed your own family member in a particularly callous manner. The fact that you actively worked to discredit the victim when she tried to report your crimes demonstrates a troubling pattern of manipulation. However, I also note your acceptance of responsibility, your lack of prior criminal history, and the victim's support for this plea agreement. Therefore, I will accept the terms as presented. The judge formally sentenced Olivia to 5 years of probation, ordered full restitution plus interest, mandated the community service, and imposed the employment restrictions. She added one additional requirement. As a condition of probation, you will undergo psychological counseling to address the underlying issues that led to this criminal behavior. Monthly progress reports will be submitted to your probation officer. As the proceedings concluded, I felt a strange lightness. Not happiness, exactly. Too much had been lost for that, but a sense of resolution. The truth was finally acknowledged in a way my family could no longer deny. Outside the courtroom, Grandma Eleanor wrapped me in a tight hug. You did it, she whispered. You stood your ground with grace and strength. I spotted my parents standing awkwardly nearby, uncertainty in their expressions. For the first time, they had heard the full story, not filtered through Olivia's manipulation or family loyalties, but presented as documented fact in a federal courtroom. They had watched their niece admit to deliberately deceiving them about their daughter. My father approached first, his expression stricken. "Sophie, we didn't know. Not the full extent." "I tried to tell you," I said simply. "For years I tried to tell you." "We should have listened," my mother acknowledged, tears in her eyes. "We failed you." It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a beginning. A crack in the wall of denial that had separated us for so long. As we left the courthouse, Agent Rivera approached with the file folder. "Ms. Wilson, I thought you might want these. It's documentation you can submit to the credit bureaus to begin the process of clearing your credit history. The prosecutor's office will also be sending formal notifications to all affected creditors." "Thank you," I said sincerely. "For everything. For believing me when no one else would." He smiled slightly. "That's the job. But for what it's worth, you handled this with remarkable resilience. Not everyone does." Stepping into the bright sunshine outside the courthouse, I felt the weight of the past 3 years beginning to lift. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding credit, reestablishing family relationships, processing the trauma of prolonged gaslighting, but for the first time I wasn't fighting alone. "What now?" Grandma Eleanor asked as we walked to her car. I thought about my new position at the Department of Energy, the career that was finally moving forward after being nearly derailed. I thought about the restitution that would eventually allow me to secure my own home, rebuild my savings, maybe even take a vacation that I actually chose. Now, I said, I start living my life again, on my terms, with my real identity. In that moment, standing in the shadow of the federal courthouse where justice had finally been served, I realized the most valuable thing I'd reclaimed wasn't my credit score or financial security. It was my voice. The voice that had been silenced, dismissed, and doubted for so long was finally heard. And that was worth more than all the stolen money in the world. 6 months after Olivia's sentencing, I stood in front of the mirror in my new apartment, adjusting the collar of my blouse. The Department of Energy's annual security conference was today, and I'd been invited to speak about identity protection protocols, a fitting topic given my personal experience. The irony wasn't lost on me. My cousin's crimes had nearly destroyed my career before it began, but now they had inadvertently made me something of an expert in the field. My phone chimed with a text from Dr. Mehta. "Conference room packed. Your panel starts in 30. You ready?" I smiled, typing back, "Ready as I'll ever be." The truth was, I felt more than ready. The past 6 months had been transformative. Not easy, but clarifying in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days of anxiety and self-doubt. In the aftermath of the court hearing, the pieces of my life had slowly begun to reassemble, but in a new configuration. The restitution payments from Olivia had allowed me to secure this apartment in a secure building, complete with doorman and surveillance cameras. My credit score was gradually recovering as fraudulent accounts were removed from my reports. And my career at the Department of Energy was flourishing, my technical skills finally recognized without the shadow of security clearance concerns. But the most profound changes had been internal. The constant anxiety that had been my companion for years had receded, replaced by a vigilant but manageable awareness. Dr. Lawson, my new therapist specializing in financial trauma and identity theft recovery, had helped me understand that my hypervigilance had been a natural response to a very real threat. "Your anxiety wasn't irrational," she'd explained in one of our early sessions. "It was your body's alarm system functioning exactly as designed. The problem wasn't your response, it was that no one believed the danger was real." Those words had been revelatory. For years, I'd internalized my family's dismissal, questioning my own perceptions and reactions. The validation that came from the federal investigation had been the first step in reclaiming trust in myself. But the ongoing therapy was helping me rebuild a foundation of self-confidence that extended beyond the specific trauma. As I gathered my presentation materials and headed for the door, I paused to check my home security app, a habit that no longer stemmed from paralyzing fear, but from a healthy commitment to self-protection. The green indicator showed all systems normal. I smiled, remembering Dr. Lawson's words, "Vigilance without anxiety is just good sense." The Department of Energy's conference center was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Security professionals from government agencies and critical infrastructure sectors filled the halls, exchanging business cards and discussing the latest threats. I spotted Director Harmon near the registration desk, deep in conversation with a military officer. She caught my eye and nodded approvingly. Dr. Mehta appeared at my elbow, clipboard in hand. "There you are. We've added about 50 more seats, and it's still standing room only. Your story has generated quite a bit of interest." "I didn't realize identity theft was such a hot topic in national security circles," I remarked, slightly uncomfortable with the attention. "It's not just the identity theft," he explained as we walked toward the conference room. "It's the clearance process angle. The fact that the security investigation uncovered a crime, rather than preventing a clearance, that's unusual. Plus," he added with a small smile, "word got around about how you handled it. Resilience under pressure is something this crowd respects." The panel discussion was scheduled for 90 minutes, myself and 2 other speakers addressing personal security vulnerabilities when the threat comes from within. As I took my seat at the table, scanning the packed room, I felt a momentary flutter of nerves. Then I spotted Agent Rivera sitting in the back row. He gave me a subtle thumbs up, and I felt my confidence return. Without his thoroughness during the background investigation, I might still be fighting a losing battle against Olivia's fraud. When it was my turn to speak, I began not with technical jargon or security protocols, but with my story. 3 years ago, my cousin began systematically stealing my identity. I said into the microphone, my voice steady. By the time it was discovered, she had opened 17 fraudulent accounts in my name and accumulated over $127,000 in debt that I knew nothing about. What made this case unusual wasn't just the family connection. It was that the crime was finally exposed through a routine security clearance investigation for my position at the Department of Energy. The room was silent, all eyes focused on me. I'm sharing this personal experience because it illustrates a critical point. Our security systems are designed to keep threats out, but sometimes the most damaging vulnerabilities come from those closest to us. People we trust, people who have access to our personal information, people we would never think to guard against. For the next 20 minutes, I outlined the techniques Olivia had used, from stealing mail during our time as roommates to accessing my online accounts using personal information only a family member would know. I explained how she had systematically undermined my credibility when I began to suspect the fraud, using family dynamics to gaslight me and prevent discovery. The technical solutions are important, I concluded. Secure passwords, 2-factor authentication, credit monitoring, these are all valuable tools. But equally important is developing the confidence to trust your own perceptions when something feels wrong, even when others dismiss your concerns. Security isn't just about systems, it's about having the courage to advocate for yourself when those systems fail. The applause was unexpected and slightly overwhelming. As the panel continued, the questions from the audience focused increasingly on the human aspects of security: how to recognize manipulation, how to maintain vigilance without paranoia, how to balance trust with protection. Afterward, a steady stream of security professionals approached me, sharing similar stories or asking for specific recommendations. One woman, a cybersecurity specialist from the Department of Defense, gripped my hand tightly. "Thank you," she said quietly. "My son is going through something similar with his ex-wife. I'm going to share your story with him. Maybe hearing it from someone else will help him realize he's not overreacting." By the time the conference ended, I had collected dozens of business cards and invitations to speak at other security events. Dr. Mehta was practically beaming. "The Assistant Secretary wants to meet you," he informed me as we gathered our materials. "He's considering a new initiative on personal security education for all federal employees, and he thinks your perspective would be valuable." As flattering as the professional recognition was, I found myself more affected by the personal connections. The people who had approached me quietly, sharing their own experiences of not being believed, of having their concerns dismissed until it was almost too late. In their stories, I recognized the isolation and self-doubt that had defined my own struggle. That evening, I met Grandma Eleanor for dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. At 78, she remained my staunchest ally, the one person who had never wavered in her support. As I described the conference and the unexpected response to my presentation, her eyes crinkled with pride. "You've turned your pain into purpose," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "That's no small thing, Sophie." "I'm not sure I would have survived this without you," I admitted. "When everyone else thought I was crazy, you believed me." "Truth has a certain ring to it," she replied simply. "I just listened for that ring." Our conversation turned to family matters, the slow, complicated process of rebuilding relationships with my parents and siblings in the aftermath of Olivia's confession. The court hearing had forced them to confront the reality they had denied for so long, but acknowledging the truth was only the first step in a difficult journey of reconciliation. "Your mother called yesterday," Grandma informed me, watching my reaction carefully. "She wanted to know if you might be open to having dinner next weekend. Just the three of you, her, and your father." I sighed, stirring my pasta thoughtfully. It's still hard. Every time I see them, I remember all the times they dismissed me, all the times they chose Olivia's lies over my truth. "Healing isn't linear," Grandma reminded me gently. "And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending it didn't happen. It means choosing to move forward without letting the past define your future." "What about Olivia?" I asked. "Have you heard anything?" Grandma nodded. "She's completing her community service at the Financial Literacy Center downtown. Your cousin Lily ran into her last week. Said she looked humbled, different. I hadn't seen or spoken to Olivia since the court hearing. The terms of her probation included no contact unless I initiated it, a boundary I had been grateful for as I worked through my own healing process. But lately, I'd found myself wondering about her, not with the old anxiety, but with a distant, almost academic curiosity. "Do you think people can really change?" I asked. "Some can," Grandma replied thoughtfully. "Usually when they hit rock bottom and can't deny the consequences of their actions anymore. But change isn't just about feeling sorry. It's about doing the hard work of becoming different. Time will tell if Olivia is willing to do that work." As we finished our meal, the restaurant manager approached our table with a small gift bag. "Ms. Wilson? Someone left this for you at the front desk." Puzzled, I accepted the bag and peered inside. It contained a small, elegantly wrapped package and an envelope with my name written in familiar handwriting. Olivia's handwriting. How did she know we'd be here? I wondered aloud, unsettled by the reminder of how well my cousin knew my habits. "It's your favorite restaurant," Grandma pointed out. "And you mentioned the conference on social media yesterday. It wouldn't take much to guess." The realization that I was still somewhat vulnerable, still somewhat trackable, sent a small shiver down my spine. But this time, the feeling wasn't accompanied by the old paralyzing anxiety, just a practical awareness that prompted me to make a mental note to review my privacy settings. I opened the envelope first. The card inside was simple, with no pre-printed message. Olivia's neat handwriting filled the blank space. "Sophie, I know you have no reason to trust anything I say, but I wanted you to know that I'm doing the work. Real therapy, not just the required sessions for probation. Understanding why I did what I did doesn't excuse it, but it might help prevent me from ever hurting someone else the same way. The enclosed gift is something I think you might find useful in your new role as a security advocate. It's not meant as a peace offering. I know those will take time if they're ever possible. It's simply an acknowledgement of the strength you've shown in rebuilding your life, despite my best efforts to destroy it. With respect and genuine remorse, Olivia." I unwrapped the package cautiously. Inside was a sleek, high-security password manager device, one of the newest models, designed specifically for government employees working with sensitive information. It was a thoughtful gift, relevant to my work, and demonstrating an understanding of my current priorities. It was also, I noted with a mixture of irony and appreciation, a tool designed specifically to prevent the kind of invasion she had perpetrated. "Well," Grandma said after reading the note, "that's something." "It is," I agreed, returning the device to its box. I would have it thoroughly checked before using it, of course. Old habits die hard, and new wisdom suggested reasonable caution. But the gesture itself was unexpectedly meaningful. The next morning, I had just arrived at my office when Director Harmon appeared in my doorway. "The assistant secretary was impressed with your panel yesterday," she said without preamble. "He's approved the new personal security initiative, and he wants you to lead it." I stared at her in surprise. "Lead it? But I'm still relatively junior in the department." "Experience trumps seniority in this case," she replied. "You've lived through exactly the kind of security vulnerability we're trying to address. That gives you a perspective none of our senior officials have." The offer was unexpected but intriguing. I would be developing training programs to help government employees recognize and respond to personal security threats, especially those coming from trusted sources. It was an opportunity to transform my painful experience into a resource that could help others avoid similar situations. "I'd like some time to consider it," I said carefully. Director Harmon nodded. "Of course. But don't take too long. The secretary wants this initiative launched by next quarter." As she left, I turned to my computer, opening a new document to list the pros and cons of accepting such a position. As I typed, an email notification appeared, a message from Agent Rivera with the subject line, "Thought you might want to see this." I opened the email to find a news article about a major credit bureau that had just announced new protocols for identity theft victims. The changes included expedited fraud alerts, dedicated case managers for complex cases, and, most significantly, a specialized process for cases involving family members. The article mentioned a, quote, recent high-profile case that had prompted the policy review. I smiled, recognizing the ripple effects of my case extending beyond my personal situation. The system that had failed me was beginning to change, not just for me but for others who would face similar challenges. Later that day, I called my parents and agreed to dinner that weekend. It wouldn't be easy. There were still hurt feelings and difficult conversations ahead, but I felt ready to begin that process from a position of strength rather than desperate need for validation. That evening, I attended my weekly support group for identity theft survivors. What had started as part of my therapy had evolved into an important community where I both received and offered support. Today, a new member was attending, a young man whose boyfriend had stolen his identity to finance a gambling addiction. "I still love him," he confessed, voice breaking. "But I don't know if I can ever trust him again. And my friends keep telling me I should just forgive and forget, move on. They don't understand what this feels like." "No one who hasn't experienced identity theft can fully understand," I acknowledged. "Especially when it's perpetrated by someone you trusted. It's not just financial. It's a profound betrayal that makes you question your own judgment." Others in the group nodded in recognition. "But here's what I've learned," I continued. "Trusting your own perceptions again is possible. Setting boundaries is possible. Building a new life with better safeguards is possible. And using your experience to help others, that's not just possible, it's transformative." I shared the news about the credit bureau's policy changes and my potential new role developing security training. "Our stories matter," I emphasized. "They're driving real change in systems that have failed people like us for years." As the meeting concluded, the young man approached me privately. "You really believe things can get better?" he asked, vulnerability evident in his expression. "I know they can," I assured him. "Not by pretending the betrayal didn't happen, but by acknowledging it, learning from it, and refusing to let it define your future. The person who stole your identity took something valuable from you, but they don't get to take your capacity for joy or purpose unless you let them." Walking home in the cool evening air, I reflected on my own journey from victim to advocate. The path hadn't been linear or easy. There had been setbacks and moments of overwhelming anger or grief. The financial damage was still being repaired, and some family relationships might never fully recover. But I had reclaimed something essential. Not just my credit score or financial stability, but my voice and my power. The next morning, I called Director Harmon and accepted the position leading the Personal Security Initiative. Then I crafted a careful response to Olivia's note, not offering forgiveness or reconciliation, but acknowledging her efforts and establishing clear boundaries for any future communication. It was a small step, but a significant one. As I worked through my daily security protocols, checking my credit monitoring app, reviewing recent transactions, updating passwords, I realized these actions no longer carried the weight of fear and anxiety they once had. They had become simply part of my routine, like brushing my teeth or locking my door. Necessary precautions, but not the center of my emotional life. 1 year to the day after my identity theft was discovered during the security clearance investigation, I stood at the podium in a congressional hearing room, testifying before a subcommittee on consumer protection. The room was filled with legislators, industry representatives, and advocates, all gathered to discuss proposed legislation strengthening protections for identity theft victims. "My name is Sophie Wilson," I began, my voice clear and confident. 1 year ago, a routine security clearance investigation for my position at the Department of Energy uncovered a systematic identity theft that had been perpetrated against me by a family member over the course of 3 years. Today, I'm here to share how that experience exposed critical gaps in our current consumer protection systems, gaps that the proposed legislation would help address. For the next 10 minutes, I outlined the obstacles I had faced in reporting the fraud, documenting the damage, and restoring my credit. I explained how family-based identity theft creates unique challenges that current systems aren't designed to address, and I described the ripple effects of financial trauma that extend far beyond credit scores and bank accounts. What happened to me was devastating, I concluded, but it also revealed my own resilience in ways I never could have anticipated. I discovered that I could trust myself even when others doubted me. I learned that persistence in the face of systemic barriers can eventually lead to breakthrough. And I found that transforming personal trauma into advocacy creates meaning from experiences that might otherwise leave only scars. The questions from committee members were thoughtful and engaged. As the hearing concluded, several approached to thank me for my testimony and to discuss specific provisions in the proposed legislation. One senator, a woman in her 60s with a no-nonsense demeanor, gripped my hand firmly. "Your testimony may well be the tipping point for getting this bill passed," she told me. "Numbers and statistics don't move people to action. Stories like yours do. You've given a face and a voice to an issue that affects millions but is often invisible." As I gathered my materials, I noticed a familiar figure waiting near the exit, Agent Rivera, who had conducted the security clearance investigation that changed everything. He nodded in acknowledgement as I approached. "That was powerful testimony," he said, "though I'm not surprised. You were remarkably clear-eyed even when we first interviewed you." "I had a good investigator," I replied with a smile. "Someone who actually listened instead of dismissing me." "Just doing my job," he demurred. "But it's gratifying to see how you've turned this situation around. Not everyone does." "I had help," I acknowledged, "and I had something to prove, to myself more than anyone else." As we parted ways, I checked my phone to find a text from Grandma Eleanor. "Watched the live stream. So proud of you. Dinner tonight to celebrate?" I smiled, typing back an enthusiastic yes. Then I scrolled through other notifications. A message from my support group coordinator asking if I'd speak at their annual conference, an email from Director Harmon about the successful launch of our security training program, and a calendar reminder about my therapy appointment later that week. Each notification represented a strand in the new fabric of my life. A life built not in spite of the identity theft, but in some ways because of it. The crime that was meant to destroy me had instead revealed strengths I might never have discovered otherwise. Walking down the Capitol steps into the bright spring sunshine, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for what had happened, but for who I had become because of it. The young woman who had once collapsed in a bank from anxiety was now testifying before Congress. The cousin who had been dismissed as dramatic and unstable was now leading a federal security initiative. The victim whose concerns had been minimized was now driving policy changes that would help countless others. My identity had been stolen, but my sense of self had emerged stronger and clearer than ever before. In reclaiming my name, I had discovered my voice. In rebuilding my credit, I had reconstructed my confidence. And in sharing my story, I had found a purpose larger than my own recovery. As I hailed a taxi to return to my office, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a storefront window, straight-backed, clear-eyed, moving forward with purpose. Not defined by what had been taken from me, but by what I had reclaimed and what I now chose to give back. That, I realized, was the ultimate victory. Not just surviving betrayal, but transforming it into a force for positive change. My cousin had stolen my identity, but she had inadvertently revealed my character. And that was something no one could ever take away. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.